All right, welcome back, grade 9. This is our next day on chapter 6. Again, this is our second unit, last unit of the year. The year has 2 units, one that covers chapters 1 through 5, the next one 6, 7, 8, and 9. We are more than halfway done the course because we have some final exam dates at the end, and we need to keep progressing through. So I'd like to, before our mass break, just reiterate some of the concepts we looked at yesterday. So in review, what are the concepts we started our study of economics with is the concept of scarcity. If there was no scarcity, we wouldn't need an economic system. But because we have scarcity, because we have limited resources and nearly unlimited wants and needs, we must have answers to basic economic questions. What should we be producing? How should we be producing it? And who gets what is produced? How do we decide who gets what is produced? Is it based upon who needs it the most? Or is it based upon who deserves it? Or is it based upon who can pay for it? So what is scarcity? The idea that resources, materials, labor, and money are all limited. Question of economics, therefore, is a response to scarcity. And those 3 basic economic questions, how we answered them reveals the values that we would like to see the world created around. Do we value individualism or do we value collectivism? Do we value self-interest or collective interest? Do we think people need to take care of themselves or should we come and take care of others? It's also connected yesterday with the concept of quality of life. So what is the purpose of the economy? Is it to create a high standard of living? Or is there more to our economic lives than just production of goods? Maybe there's something called psychological well-being. And maybe there's more to it than just economics. Maybe there's something about being socially well. So yesterday we looked at multiple dimensions of quality of life, including the economic standard of living, but also others like social and psychological. So why do we have scarcity? Well, to put it simply, it's because we have nearly unlimited wants and we have limited resources. Things are finite. So we have a finite amount of things that are connected to land. Even if it's a renewable resource like trees, we still have a limited number of trees on the planet. And if we overconsume them faster than they can reproduce, then even a renewable resource like trees could be driven into extinction. Labor can create scarcity. There's only so much physical and mental effort that some can provide. We also have economic systems as responses to scarcity. And yesterday we talked about 4 types of economic systems. We talked about traditional, we talked about planned, we talked about mixed, and we talked about free enterprise or free market. It's a lot of content we covered yesterday. So a planned economy or a centrally planned economy is an economy that, instead of allowing the invisible hand of self-interest to direct the answers to the 3 basic economic questions, there's a group of government planners that answer those questions. What to produce? Some government planners will decide that. So yesterday I suggested to you that in the Soviet Union, there's an organization called Gosplan, G-O-S-P-L-A-N, and they decided to focus their economy on guns over butter. Guns meaning metaphorical for all things, including guns that the military needed. And because they spent or allocated resources more on guns than butter, ultimately they lost the hearts and minds of the people, and the Soviet Union did collapse because of it. So what we focus on, how we answer our 3 basic economic questions, is critical. We also saw a market or a free market economy. We looked at the United States as an example. Instead of having publicly owned, we have privately owned resources. Instead of having the government making decisions about the three basic economic questions, we have individuals independent of government making those decisions. And therefore, it's individual consumption that should drive the economy, not government planning. So those are the two extremes. Free market on the right and government central planning on the left. But as we learned yesterday, every country in the world today is truly a mixed economy. Some are more socialist or collectivist than others. Others are more individualist or capitalist than others. But in the end, we have mixed economies. And here in Canada, yesterday we explored mixed economics by looking at public and private property. But right now you're sitting in public property. We're in public education. But no doubt, if I came to your house tonight and I said, hey, that TV of yours is now mine because we share it, we own it together, you'd probably be offended because that, in your mind, is your personal property that you own privately. So we have things in Canada, like Canada Post or WCHS, that are public institutions, public property. We also have private institutions and private property like Walmart. So what's the best way to achieve the public good? Should we value cooperation or should we value independence and individualism? Should we value interdependence and maybe the collective interest, the common good? Or should we value independence and self-interest? And rather than working together, cooperating, maybe we need to compete. What unleashes the best of you? Is it when you cooperate and work with others, or is it when you are working on your own? Magnify that by 38 million Canadians. Magnify that by over 7.5 billion people on the planet. Would it be better if we all worked together, or if we all worked on our own? Who do you want to put your future in the hands of? Would you rather have your destiny decided by your hard work, or by the efforts of others? Do you value cooperation or competition? Canada's economy, our government is founded on peace, order, and good government. It does reflect the many nations, including Anglophones and Francophones, that established this country. But we also have a mixed economy because the government has created modern liberalism, which means freedom through government. So in a free market like the United States, capitalists want freedom from government. They're like, government, keep your hands off my business. If you can just deregulate, if you can keep your nose and hands out of my business will grow and it'll help the economy. I'll create jobs. But in a government that becomes mixed or even more socialist, the government becomes more engaged in the economy because they believe that if left on their own, capitalists may end up hurting the community. We do bounce around a little bit depending on which political party's in power. Yesterday we said the Liberals and NDP are in power, therefore we're a little bit further left than we would be under the former Prime Minister, which was Stephen Harper. We have some crown corporations, some public property in Canada, including Canada Post, the Bank of Canada, the CBC, and Wetaskiwin Composite High School. These are often seen as essential things we want to make sure that all Canadians can access. So something is vital to a quality of life. In Canada, we're often going to say, you know what, I want to make sure that everybody, regardless of lottery of birth, can access that. So we will not have it as a private industry, we'll have it as public. So like healthcare. Whereas in the United States, in the US economy, one of their founding principles is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and they believe the best way to pursue happiness, and again, this is an exaggeration, but they do value rugged individualism. I want to be independent of government. That on my own, independent, I can have a better life. And it connects back to the founding story of America. That the founding story of America would be waves of people leaving the old world, leaving Europe, to try to, through independence, create a better life for themselves. So if they're trying to create a better life for themselves, why would they want to invite government into that relationship? To just become their master again, like the master they fled in Europe. So So in economics, a couple of things that determine price would be supply and demand. So we go back a few months and there's a lot of demand for hand sanitizer or toilet paper because people were freaking out. So then price can go up. There's people in other countries that bought up thousands of dollars of toilet paper and they're scalping it on things like Kijiji or eBay. And they're charging 10, 15, 20 times as much as the toilet paper would be worth because there's a big demand for toilet paper. Maybe you remember back in late February, early March, toilet paper was like liquid gold. Well, more like paper gold, I guess. But that's because there's a great demand for it. And it seemed like limited supply because the stores were running out. Not too many people are selling toilet paper out of the backs of their cars right now because the value isn't there. Because there's lots of supply out there. People understood that the demand is constant. Same thing with hand sanitizer. I talked about that yesterday, that some companies got into the business of hand sanitizer. They had never made it before last March and April. But because so many people said, you know what, I need hand sanitizer, there's not enough on the market, some companies started bottling hand sanitizer. People are making masks. Maybe you've made masks and sold them. Maybe your mom has, or your dad has, or your grandma has. Mask making is an example of someone saying, hey, there's a demand for something. Maybe I can supply it and make money. Supply and demand determine price. If there's only one roll of toilet paper left, and that's all we're gonna have for the rest of this week, each square of toilet paper is pretty valuable. So limited supply makes things more valuable. I'm gonna skip the research questions for now. Competition's another term that's coming up. So in some northern communities, there may be very little competition for consumers. I've lived in some towns where there might only be one gas station. So guess what? Gas prices are high. If you're hundreds of kilometers away from the next gas station, you have a near monopoly or maybe a actual monopoly. So then your price of gas can be inflated because people don't have choice. So competition is this idea that there's more than one seller, more than one producer, more than one consumer, more than one worker. And competition is meant to unlock more wealth. That if you only had one cell phone company making cell phones, then they know you're gonna buy their cell phone. You can't buy Samsung because Apple's it. All they got is Apple. So Apple's gonna keep making new ones, so you have to buy a new one. But they know that 100% of new phone sales goes to Apple. So they don't have to be as innovative because they don't have to try to convince you to buy their product as opposed to a different product because there is no different product. So in a free market economy, competition is meant to unlock innovation. But because there's competition, people have to be innovative. They have to attract your consumer loyalty. Theoretically, competition should also drive the price down. Oh man, you know what? I'd love to buy this cell phone, but I can buy this other one for half the price. You're right, our product is overpriced. We're gonna need to adjust that. So lots of little things that you can come back and look at for application. We're just looking at some of the key points here. So a monopoly, again, like the gas station scenario, will create higher prices. Why do Canadians pay so much money for their cell phone plans? You compare our cell phone plans to the US, and it's significantly higher. And we're gonna read an article about that later. Why do we pay more than even countries like Australia that are literally an island? They're isolated. And Australian people are like Canadians. Demographically, there's some centers of high population, but much of Australia is very, very depopulated, just like Canada. So you think Australians would be paying a similar fee for their phone than we are, but they're paying a fraction. Why? Because we have very few companies in Canada that are selling cell phone packages. So they're keeping the prices artificially high. So much so that the government of Canada has had to give them a mandate to lower the prices. There's no reason why 3 people in a family should be paying $350 a month for cell phones. as a combined family plan. That's ridiculous. $250 a month, that's a car payment, not a cell phone package. In the United States, 3 in a family might be able to get a package for $50, not $350. So Canadians, because there's not enough companies competing up here, because the government's allowed these companies to charge inflated prices, we're paying too much for cell phones. We need competition. So we'll see an article about that later today. All right, so that's kind of a review of where we were at yesterday. And I have one more other way to review as well. So we have this other Prezi that looks at some of the key concepts from yesterday. So again, there's scarcity. So again, if you are following from home, everything's on Google Classroom every day. You don't have to be here. Everything's going to be online for the rest of the year. So at home, you could look at this. Scarcity, that's what it means. And then what else did we do yesterday? We looked at the spectrum. Planned economies. What are they again? Here's what a planned economy is. Then what's a mixed economy? And then what's a free market economy? So the nice thing is everything's in each lesson. So I've divided the course into lessons. Most chapters have 1 lesson. Chapter 1 had 3 lessons, just because I was really excited about that chapter. But then that lesson shows you basically a week. This is what we're doing for a week. And then each day on Google Classroom, I'm dividing it up. Okay, this is what we did today. So there's no reason to fall behind. So if we say a government is shifting the economy left, that means we're being more collective. We care more about the common good. If we're saying it shifts towards the right, then we're being more individualist. We care more about self-interest. Probably tired of paying taxes. So there's lots of examples in Canada of public good. And a good way to compare Canada and the United States, something we're going to be doing this week, is comparing our healthcare systems. Canada has a public healthcare system. The United States has a public presence in healthcare, but much of the U.S. healthcare industry is delivered privately. And because of that, there are Americans who exist outside of coverage. They pay tens of thousands of dollars. It's not uncommon to hear of a Canadian traveling to America, getting sick and owing millions of dollars. There's cases of Canadians going to America without coverage over the last few months, contacting COVID-19, having to spend 3 or 4 days in the hospital and owing $1.2, $1.4 million. I'm going to guess you don't have that kind of cash in your back pocket. So maybe you need to be thankful at times that you live in Canada and we have public health care. So we will look at healthcare, because it's not quite that simple as a way to look at the differences. Competition, we just reviewed in economics, is between producers to sell more products or better products to consumers, and when you have no competition, you might have a monopoly, and that can distort the marketplace. If you have a monopoly, chances are you can charge higher than you should prices. One other topic we're going to get to today are labor unions. So when you study the Industrial Revolution in grade 10, you're going to see that early on in the Industrial Revolution, there's a lot of exploitation of children and other workers. And eventually the workers decided, hey, let's create a collective where we can have a united voice and we can, as a collective, bargain for safer and better working conditions. And hopefully you'll be able to leave here today knowing more about unions. So we're about to go outside, and I do mean outside. You should go outside, and if you don't have a coat, then guess what? It's going to be winter now. Bring a coat to school, because we can't be just walking around the hallways during our mask breaks. That you're either in this classroom or you're outside. You can't be roaming the hallways because there's classes on right now, and you're disruptive. So it's mask break time. Let's go outside.